Hi, I'm Jess, and welcome to Spooky Movie Club. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Spooky Movie Club. It is the last week of Horror Comedy Month. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. We're here to talk about the lovely Basket Case. It was my first time watching this, so I'm excited to get into it. If you want to skip ahead to next week's spooky movie or the discussion, I'm going to leave timestamps below. Like I said before, this is an Arrow release. This is the original cover art. Inside is their design. I don't want to pull it out because it'll take me 10 years to get it back in, as we've seen previously. But I like the cover of the Blu-ray there. All right. The tenant in room 7 is very small, very twisted, and very mad. He's mad. He's mad, all right. Okay. The feature debut of director Frank Henenlotter. I think I did that right. 1982's Basket Case is a righteous and blood-spattered midnight movie experience now immortalized in a lavish new 4K restoration by the Museum of... it says right on the back. By the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA. Dwayne Bradley seems like a pretty ordinary guy. His formerly conjoined twin, Belial, on the other hand, is a deformed creature who lives in a wicker basket. Arriving in the Big Apple and taking up a room at a seedy hotel, the pair set about hunting down and butchering the surgeons responsible for their separation. Filmed on a shoestring budget against the backdrop of 1980s New York, where it played on the midnight movie circuit for over 2.5 years, Basket Case has clawed its way from its humble origins to become one of the most celebrated cult movies of all time. I always get so weary about reading the back of the box before going into a movie, because sometimes they give too much away, and then sometimes they give you enough tidbits to go in with enough information. Like, I feel like reading the back of this, I would have appreciated like the movie a bit more reading this before watching the movie. But yeah, let's get into my 3 things. So the first thing I want to discuss is, I mentioned it on the back of the box, is this was filmed on a shoestring budget. It was made for $35,000, which is measly. Like I could like close my eyes and be like, if I needed to get $35,000, I feel like that, I mean, it's a lot of money, but I feel like it's more reasonable to grab than say like $100,000 to make a movie. This is like a very small budget. I was shocked by what they were able to accomplish with such a small budget. I mean, you had New York, first of all, is very expensive to film in. So how they got the permits or whatever to film there, the backdrop of New York. They used all practical effects. It's the 80s, obviously, but they had a little rubber monster, and they did stop motion, and they had lots of blood and gore and guts. And I think that if you were to take this movie now and try to make it with like an independent budget now, which is way more than this, I feel like it wouldn't do it justice, because like when you have a small budget, you're forced to be creative and make certain choices, and that's what makes it so much fun and exciting. And I feel like I bring up David Lynch a lot in the Spooky Movie Club, but David Lynch, when he was doing Blue Velvet, he really wanted to get it made, and he wanted Final Cut, and his, financier was like, okay, yeah, but I'm slashing your budget in half if that's how you want to do it. And he was forced to be creative, think of inventive things, and that movie is wonderful. I mean, we can also talk about Eraserhead, where that took forever to get made on a very small budget. And obviously that is his claim to fame, is Eraserhead. Now, I didn't like Eraserhead very much. It was kind of weird. But again, I think you're forced to be creative. Some of these bigger budget films, $200 gajillion, and the movie's terrible. And they're just like, oh, we'll just CGI this thing in or do this thing. Money can just like cover it up. They can just fix it with money. And I feel like this $35,000 was amazing what they could accomplish. And I just think it goes to show that you don't need all this money to make, an okay film. This is pretty good. The second thing I want to discuss is Belial's creature design. Now, I knew from the box that he lived in a wicker basket, and I was worried that we were going to have like the Jaws effect where you never see Blyle until like the end and he just appears. I thought it was going to be one of those because of such a small budget. No, 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 no. Blyle is front and center. He is in it. He is rocking. He's like this weird rubber meatball, as we were calling him, with arms, with arms. And he like, I don't know how he moved around. I thought his creature design, although you could, it was rubber and it was like not that great, but like I mean, it's pretty good for what they had. One of my favorite parts is when they would use stop motion with Blyle and how the frame rate was so different, and it was so like when you would go from one thing to the stop motion, it was hilarious but wonderful and charming. I loved his little rubbery hands. I thought overall his creature design for the budget they had was decent. And I loved his voice. I loved his teeth. Everything about Blyle was just, his creature design was great. I loved it a lot. And the third thing I want to talk about, the last thing, is another thing about Blyle. And that's like his character development, his just character in general. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I mean, how did he survive? Okay, so I understand that they're Siamese twins and they got cut in half. And we had this whole scene when Dwayne gets drunk and we flash back, wonderful, to explain give the whole backstory. But I mean, is it ever explained how he was able to survive in the trash bag? And how does he eat? How does he pee? Does he poop? And is he like super strong? Like, I just don't understand what Blyle is. Like, he's not a human. Is he not human? He's like a creature. So, like, was he not like a Siamese twin, but rather like Dwayne and then a creature on Dwayne? I was very confused by that. They never really explain it. I mean, you would think that they were twins because they have the connection. You know, I was talking about twins. They showed the Twin Towers. They really played on the twin thing. But I didn't understand Blyle. I didn't understand what he was, what his strengths were, how he was surviving, how he kills in general. I guess he was cutting people in half with his fingernail, with his really long, gross fingernail. None of it made any sense in that regard. But I think that's what kind of makes this film unintentionally funny. Like, I don't know if it was meant to be a horror comedy. I think it was meant to just be straight horror. But I think just the premise of Blyle and who he was made it unintentionally funny. You know what I mean? So my final thoughts on Basket Case are that I didn't know that this was, you know, being preserved in the Museum of Modern Art. That was shocking when that came up on the screen. So that's first of all saying something. And also, I've seen worse. Okay, this movie was made for $35,000. I can honestly say I have seen worse movies. They made what they could with the budget that they had, and I think they did an excellent job. And it's just really, you know, reiterating that movies don't need to be gajillions of dollars. They can be small budgets if you have like a fun story or, you know, whatever. And I will probably watch this again, but only for the special features, maybe like commentary or kind of deleted scenes. I don't think I'd watch it again just to like have fun and watch it. But I definitely think you need to check it out. I mean, it's preserved by the Museum of Modern Art. If that doesn't give you enough reason to check it out, you have to. And it's free on Tubi with ads, granted, but it's free. And I think everybody should check this out. I think it's a little piece of history. So that wraps up Horror Comedy Month. I do have to say that I think that is my forte. I know everybody likes horror films differently. Some people love to be scared. Some people love the gore. I want to be entertained and to laugh. So I think horror comedy is definitely my wheelhouse. We are going to check out some more genres. Obviously, this is Spooky Movie Club. So the next month we're going to do for May will be sci-fi horror. And I got this idea because of somebody on Twitter who decided to say that if something takes place in space, it can't be a horror film, which I disagree. So now we're doing sci-fi horror, all because of that. And it's definitely a genre that I have enjoyed in the past, so interested in seeing some new ones and some old favorites in this month. The first one we were going to do, I've never seen before, but I've heard a lot of people say that it's the scariest film they've ever seen. Some people have recently rewatched this and say it's not as good as they remember. So we'll see. This will be my first time, so we'll see what I think of it. This week's spooky movie is Event Horizon. That was visual was a brain trick. This takes place in space. I did peek on the back of the box at these little pods, and this kind of reminds me of The Abyss. You remember that film? I freaking love The Abyss. Is that considered? I feel like that's considered sci-fi horror. That's pretty creepy. I loved The Abyss. But that's kind of the vibes I'm getting from this movie, and it has the guy from Jurassic Park in it. I'm excited to check it out because I mean, like, if we're being totally honest, we bought this because Red Letter Media did a review on Event Horizon. I've never seen it, so I needed to watch it before I watched the review. Let's just be completely honest of what's happening here. So yeah, that's this week's spooky movie. All right, that wraps it up for this week's spooky movie and wraps up Horror Comedy Month. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to join us for the viewing party of Event Horizon, we're going to do that on Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Discord. And if you want to join us for the live discussion, we're going to do that on Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitch. I'm going to leave the links below. If you can't make any of those, don't worry about it because I'll be back here on Sunday with the review. Bye.